You can be seated. Wow. Good morning. It feels like a fitting way to start a celebration of life. It's good morning. We're here to mourn together the loss of a wife, a daughter, a firefighter, a paramedic, a nurse, and a friend. However, Lieutenant Jess Wyman wouldn't want us to gather as a sad group of saps. So instead, let's celebrate the time that we shared with Jess, because that's what she'd want. Tell a story, crack a joke, laugh, and yeah, if you need to, cry. But not for the loss that we're learning to move forward with, but instead for the joy that Jess brought to our lives. My name's Brian Morrissey. I'm a 12-year member of Nashua Fire Rescue, and I've been asked to present the speakers who will honor Lieutenant Wyman. On behalf of Jess's husband, Chris, her mother, Jan, Chief Steve Buxton, and the members of Nashua Fire, I'd like to thank each of you for being here today to share in our loss. Lieutenant Wyman was a larger-than-life figure in many ways. She was funny, she was kind, she was involved, but most of all, she was fair. Didn't matter who you were, where you came from, or who your father was, as she'd like to remind me. Jess always gave you a chance. More than that, she helped you to be the best firefighter or EMT that you could be. It's often impossible in this life to see the impact that we make. As firefighters, the words, "I was just doing my job," or "I was just doing what anyone else would do," are often used to downplay impact. Well, look around. I think the impact that Lieutenant Wyman has made throughout her life is abundantly clear now. Firefighting is an inherently dangerous job. It's something we've been told over and over. It's inside our turnout gear. It's written inside our helmets. But still, the reality of that often comes from beyond the reach of our protective equipment. We think of danger as pushing down a smoke-filled hallway or searching above the fire floor for a victim. But the long-term effects are still being realized. Occupational cancer is stealing from us. It's stealing time, it's stealing loved ones, and it's stealing some of the strongest firefighters that we know. I'd like to now invite a few guests up to share with you a little bit more about who Lieutenant Jess Wyman really was. Our first speakers are from Camp Fully Involved, a project of Jess's that she was amazingly passionate about. Deputy Chief Christina Scheck, Deputy Chief Lisa Albino.
Jess Wyman was a woman with a dream to inspire, to empower the next generation of women in the fire service. From her vision, with the assistance of some friends in 2007, Camp Fully Involved was born. Since its inception, young women from both around the country and internationally had the opportunity to learn firsthand about the fire service. And along the way, they gained invaluable skills like leadership, determination, and perseverance. She will be dearly missed by all of us who had the honor and privilege of working alongside her at this amazing program, and we are blessed to call her a friend. I first met Jess back in 2007 when I was asked to take part in Camp Fully Involved. When I showed up at camp that year, I was greeted by that infectious smile that we all knew and love. Jess had a passion for the fire service and wanted to let young girls know that they could also be firefighters. Many cadets over the years have stated how Jess changed their lives with camp. Jess helped influence many on their path of life. Last year, when Jess came to me saying she could no longer plan camp, didn't have the time, she asked me if I would be interested in becoming the director of camp. I quickly told her I could never fill her shoes, and it's going to take two of us to do that. Christina and I stepped up and took camp over last year. We were able to run camp. But it wasn't without the oversight of Jess last year. She really helped, even though she couldn't be there with us. She truly was the best cheerleader anyone could have on their side. Jess, you are truly one of a kind, one of the strongest, kindest, funniest, and most honest, unselfish person many of us knew. Thank you for trusting Christina and I with your program. We won't let you down. Jess was larger than life, as you've heard. She could light up a room, any room that she walked into. She touched so many lives and was always made the best of everything. Jess also enjoyed being involved in shenanigans. I'm sure she could find it, and especially when it came to toilet paper. When I was promoted to deputy chief, Jess was one of the first ones to the Cape for my swearing in. And, well, when I finally got back to my office, I'm still finding toilet paper 2 years later. I think they toilet papered everything. And I knew Jess was involved in that one. Jess and Chris enjoyed traveling, and we all had some great trips, and we laughed till our sides hurt. So many great places we traveled with the two of them, whether it was Aruba, Grand Cayman, Nashville, the British Virgin Islands, or just hanging out at the Cape. We laughed and enjoyed life, and there were many shenanigans also. Thank you, Chris and Jan, for sharing Jess with us. You're our second family, as the fire service is. I'm going to leave you with these thoughts. Tell me and I forget. Show me and I remember. Involve me and I understand. Jess lived by that motto of Camp Fully Involved, and we will continue to honor her legacy. Rest in peace, my friend. We'll take it from here.
I met Jess my first year at camp. A mutual friend told me about the camp. I reached out to her and I asked if I can come and be an instructor. They didn't have things like this when we were young. So she let me in. What an amazing experience. It changed my life. First, let me tell you about the girls. The camp is physically challenging, mentally challenging. She holds the girls to a high standard. We tell them on day one, we don't want to hear the words, I can't. We want to hear the words, I'll try. And they do. They walk away at the end of the week realizing that they are so much stronger physically and mentally than they realized. They're capable of doing so much more than they originally thought. Whether or not they come into fire service or they go on to something else, they can reach higher because they know that they can meet the challenges ahead of them. This is one of the bases of the camp. This is what Jess created. One of the other big things that I saw was teamwork. The girls are broken down into groups. When one person is weak, somebody else is strong. We work together, just like the fire service. We build each other up. We are a team. We saw that in the girls. But that was also one of the values that Jess had. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but she was the kind of person that succeeded in everything she tried. She did a lot. She believed in hard work, dedication, persistence, and she succeeded. She lived by those values. And she taught us to do the same thing. She taught the girls, and she also taught the instructors. And that's another way that I grew, that I was affected. I had a whole new family within the instructors. There's the fire service family, and then there's my Camp Fully Involved family. Just like everything, you learn from each other. We can walk out of our department and forget that our department's not the only way. You start meeting people from another department. And you start talking to each other. You start talking about what's going on in your department, what's going on in your station. You learn from each other. Not just the skills on the fire grounds, but you start learning about the leadership skills. You see that exemplified in the people standing next to you. You see that in Jess. She was always about sharing knowledge. She was always about personal growth, professional growth. It wasn't just about what she succeeded, but it was also about bringing up people along with her. She truly was a mentor to me. And that's why she created the camp. If you ask firefighters, we tell you it's the best job in the world. But when we started, there wasn't that many females. They didn't realize how great this profession was. And we needed to introduce them at a young age and realize that this too is an option for you. And it makes me happy when I look around and I see more female faces amongst the ranks. It's one big family. I said she was a mentor. I grew professionally alongside of her. She helped me when I was preparing for promotions. I drive up to New Hampshire, sit with her. She helped me prepare. She would teach me things when I was a brand new officer. It all comes down to how you treat people. And that's how she was. She was a true leader. She was also a great friend. That's probably where I'm going to miss her the most. Like Lisa said, we went on some pretty epic adventures. There was a lot of shenanigans, and there was always something involved with toilet paper. I also learned that you have to travel with your own toilet papers because yours mysteriously disappears the next time you go to the bathroom. And that laugh. She is the wittiest person. By the way, I'm the funniest person 3 days later in the car by myself when I think of what to say. She can come up with it at that one moment. And when I say we laughed, I mean, it would hurt. We were all laughing so hard. And that's the energy she always has and she always gave out. So Jess was a true leader, a great friend, believed in honor, respect, excellence, hard work, persistence. She taught the people around her. She taught the girls at the camp, and she taught the instructors. And I just hope that we continue that legacy. It is an honor to continue to be part of Camp Fully Involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking next will be those from Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, where Jess was employed as a paramedic, an RN, and most recently, the Executive Director of Inpatient and Critical Care Services. Dr. Leahy, Laura Forgione, and Mary Scott.
Well, I must admit, I've never seen such a diverse crowd for a gathering like this. I wasn't necessarily comfortable attending in a tie-dye shirt. I didn't know what shoes to wear. But then I thought, Jess would love every minute of this. And this is a perfect example of Jess's world. She can take the most somber or critical event and find a way to respectfully, or not so respectfully, impart some humor. Her wit and wisdom were among the many attributes that made her the respected leader we came to know and love. As a firefighter, paramedic, and nurse, she seemed to nail every superlative that you could think of. The care that she provided to her patients was outstanding, and her mentorship made those around her better. Jess's teaching acumen was unique at times, but certainly memorable, including some of her nursing commandments or dictums, such as, the magic is in the milliamps. Find somebody that can match your crazy. Try not to shock people if they're awake. People go crazy for pumpkin spice Narcan. And my personal favorite, there are such things as life-saving cookies, and good friends know when you need one. Rudyard Kipling once wrote, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. Well, Jess certainly did that and accomplished so much more. Okay, maybe not the running part. She probably would have opted for a golf cart. As first responders and healthcare providers, we put our patients above our own needs. Being the patient becomes difficult. Yet Jess managed that with grace, dignity, and of course, her unique sense of humor. Our hearts are broken over the loss of Jess. And as Jess always said, when something broke in our department, that's why we can't have nice things. And now I think I need a cookie.
To know Jess is to love Jess. I had the privilege of meeting her many years ago when she used to bring patients into the emergency department. She always delivered the very best care to her patients, and she did that throughout the rest of her career as a nurse. When Jess joined the ED as a paramedic, it was kind of a new role in the ED, and she continued, of course, to give the best care to the patients, but there were so many extra rules that she had to follow after she entered the door of the hospital that it was really hard to navigate. But Jess, of course, did it with grace and humor. And there were a few times she looked at me and said, do you think we'd get fired if we rolled the patient back out into the ambulance bay? That I could take care of them? There were a lot of rules in the hospital. Jess quickly became a leader in any role she had at the hospital and was always willing to step in, assist a coworker at any time, day or night. Jess was an integral part of the incident command team during the COVID crisis. We were very lucky to have her then because she knew incident command inside and out. And she was the first one with Dr. Leahy to set up the tent and go in and test patients, which really was a great leadership move so that everybody else felt comfortable that they could go in. Jess, in 2019, became the first full-time trauma program manager. She embraced the role. Her first PowerPoint that she did for a large group, including some of the chiefs at the hospital, I said, you have to follow this template. And it was a very boring template. It had green and gray in it, I think. She goes, you gotta be kidding me. And I go, well, I don't know, you can probably do what you want, but they really like us to follow the template. So she made her first trauma program presentation with tons of data, but she had a skull and a vertebrae on the first page. and she got it to spin around on the screen. And no one at the hospital had ever seen that before. And it was like, boom, I'll just drop the mic, and I'm not going to tell you any of the detail there. We're all like, so. She continued on with her education, and she became, in 2021, the nurse manager of emergency services. That was another role she was very enthusiastic about, and she was on the projection to become the next director of emergency services. We were all so very proud of her. So Jeff achieved many degrees, and I could go on and probably have you here for days about all the degrees and awards and certifications that she had. Two to mention are she got dual master's degrees. You know, like one wasn't enough, but she got a master's of science in nursing, and she got a master's in healthcare administration. And Chris went away soon after that with business, and she was playing with the fact that maybe I'll get a doctorate. And I go, Chris, oh my God, she's going to do it when you're gone. And he goes, no, we talked about it. She's going to take a break. By the time he got home, she had enrolled. And I, yeah, right. And that was by far her most proud accomplishment, is when she got her DMP, which is a Doctor of Nurse Practice, in 2021. I was able to celebrate Jess's accomplishment when all our travel buddies who were in the room surprised her and snuck down to Nashville, where we celebrated with the biggest and largest Bloody Marys we've ever seen. It was like a salad coming out of it, and it had bacon and, I don't know, a bunch of other stuff. Surprising Jess, though, was the hardest thing this group ever accomplished, because she knew everything. Jess knew how to work hard, and she knew how to play hard. So I've talked a lot about Jess's accomplishments, but the most important ones were her connection with her coworkers and her patients. Jess was always kind, and she was always an advocate for her patients, and her patients loved her. They told her that. They told her bosses that. They loved her. As a colleague and a coworker, she lifted everybody up and mentored many nurses on their career path. She encouraged, I can't fully involve women to progress. She also did that with nursing. And this could be a brand new baby nurse, or this could be a nurse with 30 years. She goes, go after it. You can do it. She was always there to lend a hand when someone was drowning in work. She brought humor and joy into a very serious organization. She goes, you know, this place is really serious, Mary, the hospital. I know. But how she did that, she always mentioned Taco Tuesday when she was reporting out on her trauma stats. We have an outside eating area in the coffee shop. She nicknamed it the Lanai, and to this day, that has stuck. So personally, I will miss my dear friend. I have a ridiculous amount of martini pictures in my phone all the time. I mean, who wouldn't send out a bad Santa martini picture? We enjoyed eating oysters to a point where they almost made him sick. There were so many, but we enjoyed every one. Chris didn't like oysters. He just used to look at us and go, you guys are just crazy. We enjoyed new recipes, but we always made sure we brought some home to each other or to work. We used to golf together. She laughed a lot. I laughed a lot, to a point where we almost fell out of the golf cart. She goes, you know, Mary, you've got to watch YouTube to become a better golfer. Okay. Remember dinging out our cars. You know, when you're a leader, you have to go in when there's the biggest snowstorm. And we were there for 10 or 12 hours, and then we had to dig our car out of the ED CVS parking lot because we could never get a parking space in all the years we worked there in the garage. It happened. I will miss our many travels. I know the other ladies have mentioned it. Chris, my husband Jeff, Lisa, Frank, Christina, and Stephen are our travel buddies. We had gone to Nashville to surprise her, Aruba, Grand Cayman, Cape Cod, Lake Maury. I think one of our funniest moments, we were traveling at Grand Cayman, and we let Jess drive the car. Now, it was a van, and it was on the wrong side of the road because that's how they drive. And every time she used the windshield wiper, she thought she was using the directional. And then I'll just mention there was this lovely lady on the side of the road in a beautiful dress, and we hit this big, huge puddle. This was not intentional, and covered all the way up, and we're like, we're in a foreign country, we got to get out of here. So I do think, in closing, one of the funniest legacies that Jess has left the hospital is something called a screaming little goat. She would deliver these to your desk when you weren't there, and you'd open it up and go, what is this? And when you found out what this was, you would laugh and laugh and laugh. But then it became spreading through the hospital. And there were a lot of screaming goats in the hospital. This is particularly for a bad day when you just, you can't say what you want to, so you're going to press the goat. So once you hear the distress of the screaming goat, you must respond and support the goats, as Jess supported every one of us daily. I think I hear some in the audience. And that was Jess. Thank you.
Our next speaker is the Chief of the Nashua Fire Rescue, Steve Buxton.
You're doing great. Seemed like a good idea at the start of this to go towards the end of the program, but those guys know how to land a joke. That's not really my thing. See how I am improving. Good morning. Jessica Wyman touched so many lives, as can be seen here today by this gathering. Her legacy of bravery and the positive way she lived her life will undoubtedly leave a lasting impact on myself, my family, her brothers and sisters of NFR, her friends and colleagues at Southern New Hampshire, those at Camp Fully Involved, and the countless others that have had the pleasure of crossing paths with her, whether it be for a brief moment or a lifetime. It is with profound sorrow that we received the heartbreaking news from Chris early on the morning of Tuesday, November 28th. The devastating reality of Jess losing her battle with cancer struck deep, leaving many in disbelief at her untimely departure. Lieutenant Jessica Wyman had confronted occupational cancer with the same tenacity, courage, and inspiration that she lived her life with each and every day. Lieutenant Wyman was a dedicated firefighter and had a remarkable 26 years in the New Hampshire Fire Service, including better than 16 with Nashua Fire Rescue. Jess was hired on May 14th, 2001, with 19 other probationary firefighters, and what is speculated to be the best recruit class in the history of Nashua Fire Rescue, Class 101. Today, many leaders within our organization are from that class, and all have had an impact on our job. There is no doubt from day one in this group, Jess stood out as a natural leader, was impactful, but most important to her, she earned her place at the table on her terms. Jess participated in all aspects of our job. She was an aggressive firefighter in the truest of Nashua fire traditions. She spent some time as a driver-operator of Engine Company 1 and participated on our hazardous materials team. Anywhere she went and anything she participated in, she was all in. She had an impact and she left her mark. Her commitment extended beyond our local borders. She contributed to the USAR team, Massachusetts Task Force 1, as a rescue specialist, and she was deployed on several occasions in our country, including a deployment to New Orleans immediately following Hurricane Katrina. Jess was promoted to lieutenant on June 6, 2010, serving time in several stations until settling down at Station 4 on East Hollis Street. This was the station that Jess would retire out of, working on the busiest company in the city right up until her final shift on September 30th, 2017. Jess was cited on several occasions for actions on duty, which very few people outside of NFR knew, including Chris and her mother. Jess carried out her work with humility, prioritizing involvement with the team, making meaningful impact, and above all, striving for a positive outcome rather than seeking recognition. After retiring in 2017, rather than slowing down like most people do, Jess embarked on a remarkable journey. Her plans to get multiple degrees, a doctorate, and climb the organizational ladder at Southern New Hampshire Medical all came to fruition. She earned 2 master's degrees, one in nursing and another in healthcare administration. In 2021, she graduated from Eastern Kentucky University, receiving her Doctor of Nurse Practice. Her final project focused on cyanide toxicity in patients involved in closed compartment fires. Her dedication extended to educating paramedics in the state of New Hampshire on the use of cyanide antidote kits in smoke inhalation patients. As if all of this weren't enough, Jess achieved great success at Southern New Hampshire and eventually became the Executive Director of Inpatient and Critical Care Services. While obtaining multiple degrees and climbing the ladder at Southern New Hampshire, she still managed to travel the world with Chris and vacation with friends. She enjoyed life on her terms, and in 6 short years of retirement, this woman achieved more than most do in a lifetime, which is no surprise to anybody that is gathered here today. Throughout her life, Jess was a mentor and inspiration to many in the fire service, nursing, and to the many young women who participated in Camp Fully Involved. I think possibly the most cherished role Jess filled in this world was the director of Camp Fully Involved. The camp's mission was to provide young women a safe, dynamic, interactive, and physically challenging environment to gain strength and knowledge while building confidence and leadership skills. Having assisted at this camp on several occasions, it was something to observe and take part in. The victories were large and small, as well as the growth that takes place in 1 week, which was astounding. But we should not be surprised what can be accomplished when a woman of Jess's caliber decides to call her friends and get something done. Throughout the years, Jess competed in multiple sports, including soccer, hockey, semi-pro football, and she was a world-ranked powerlifter, competing in several events around the country, as well as in Europe. Jess was funny. At times, her wit would match that of a professional comic, and her humor was unmatched in most firehouses. She had a way of always making people feel welcome and part of the team. She was one of the rare individuals who could blend with any crowd just by being herself. Whether a fire station, an emergency room, a biker bar, or any crowd you could imagine, her ability to connect with people from all walks of life was unparalleled. She could walk in anywhere, be herself, and walk out at the end laughing and having gained a few new friends. Jess was a badass, yet also a gentle, caring woman who was an inspiration to all she came across. She knew the time and the place to inject some humor, tough love, or simply sit with you in silence. Her blend of strength, humor, and genuine care made her a beloved fixture in any community. She was always true to herself and made it easy to love her and to be loved by her. The essence of Jess as a person, a leader, but most importantly, how she lived her life, is aptly captured in the motto of Camp Fully Involved. Tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. Jess, you will be sorely missed, but your impact will forever endure. You will most certainly never be forgotten. Rest easy, my dear friend.
Thank you, Chief. And finally, next person to speak is going to be Jess's husband, Chris Wyman, who's going to share a few words with everyone.
Don't go far. I'm staying with you. Good morning, everybody. In true Wyman fashion, and in Jess's honor, it's called Wyman winging it, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So Jess had an absolute knack for this. Her husband, not so much. But she had an absolute knack of standing up in front of a group of people without a prepared speech, in front of a very large crowd, and by the time you were done, you were laughing your ass off. So, including my brother, who just recently got married not too long ago, and they asked Jess to make the speech at their wedding, and Jess came up with a gigantic ream of paper and dropped it out and said, "Doug, this is all the things you told me I couldn't talk about, right?" So that's my wife. That's the humor that she had no matter where she went. Whether it was in front of a group of fire service folks, whether it was in front of fire service leaders, because with the creation of Camp Fully Involved, you know, the New England Association of Fire Chiefs asked Jess to speak. Camp Fully Involved actually got recognition from the White House during President Obama's term, so there were people from the White House that came and talked to Jess about that stuff. And no matter where she went, that woman could flip a switch as to what crowd she was with, where she had to be, how she had to act. It didn't matter what. Jess had that knack to do that, and she could do it in the blink of an eye. So over the last couple of weeks, as many people don't or may know, Jess was in the hospital for over a month. The road we traveled that month, we never expected to be here. But with that came a lot of questions and actually people just asking stuff. And so they were like, you know, you were lucky that you found Jess and all that stuff. And I reminded them, like, no, Chris didn't find Jess found him. So, and I sit back, and on those conversations, it was little strange things that if you look back, and I think back to some of the things that we ran into when we met. And when you know who I am as my career and all that stuff, we met during Fire Prevention Week. When we got engaged, and everybody from the fire marshals is gonna laugh, I proposed to her on the 4th of July. Little did we know what that would cause, because after proposing to her and her being married to me, she then, for the 20 years I was at the state fire marshal's office, became a 4th of July widow. So, as she would put it, because I would be gone every 4th of July. In the week of the 4th of July. There's a lot to Jess. The smiling woman, the personality, and everybody's talked about it, the larger than life. That was Jess in every way, shape, or form. She could, as I say, walk into a room, and I've said it a million times over the years, she could walk into a room like this and walk out with every single one of you being her new friend. And that was just being Jess. And I'd always joke, unlike her porcupine husband. So I was the more guarded one. And Jess got me to drop that guard. When I met Jess, we were both working for Care Plus Ambulance. And she saw me first, and that led into something else. And then she ended up calling my house and talking to my mother one night. And my mother going, "So who's this woman that's calling you?" Because I was still living at home at the time in Concord. The years that followed, I met a woman and fell in love with a woman instantly. We met in October of '93, and we were engaged by July 4th, 1994. It was one of those things that we both clicked. When I say when you met your best friend and your soulmate, it's an understatement. It really was. From there, it's an interesting journey. The last 30 years that I had with her were absolutely amazing. A lot of people don't know, and I don't want people to cry, but there's a bunch of stuff up on the table that are from when we first met. So Chief Buxton talked about her being big into competitive sports and all that stuff. Jess got into competitive sports, but like everybody said, she didn't get in it for the competition. She got in it to reach a goal. So no matter what she did, no matter what it was always about achieving a goal. It was always about setting a goal. How far can I push myself? How far can we get? Did she have to come up number one? Absolutely not. But the fact that she was able to get there is what mattered to her the most. So whether it was powerlifting, whether it was soccer, whether it was hockey, whether it was semi-pro football when all that wasn't enough, my bagpiper here today, Campbell Webster, when I met Cam, I met Cam when he was probably 2 years old. When his parents came over from England and I met them and I started competitively bagpiping and attending bagpipe competitions, Jess didn't want to be the atypical spouse. She's like, I got to sit there and watch you bagpipe? So having been the power lifter she's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to watch you bagpipe. You go compete. She took up Scottish heavy athletics instead. So she's on the other side throwing the caber and doing everything else and all that stuff. She goes, you go do your thing, you go do your musical thing, whatever it is. I'm going over there. And it just didn't stop. I mean, with that, I mean, Jess has, and again, it wasn't about the first place and it wasn't about the records or anything like that. It was about achieving the goal. But it was amazing to watch that woman, train, become the person she did. One of the funniest competitive sports things we went to was one in Las Vegas, and her medal's up there for it, and it was a battle of the biceps, and the only thing that made it funnier was the bodybuilder that was the announcer for the event. As an example, they had to do so many reps within a minute. At the end of that minute, they would measure the person's bicep, and that went into their overall score. So there's Jess. She gets up. They have to measure the bicep first, so she gets up there. She does her 60, 70 reps, whatever she does in the minute time frame. They measure her bicep. Now, the bodybuilder, who was one of the Olympians, was like, this is how it works. This is my bicep. This is how we're going to grade it. Well, wouldn't you know, his bicep was like 18 and a half or 19. By the time that was done, they measured Jess's 19 and a half. The guy not only was like, what? He actually told the woman that measured it, he covered the mic, you could still hear it, measure it again. That made us all laugh. But that was the kind of stuff that Jess did. Her career in the fire service was amazing. She never ever wanted me to worry about her. Probably the worst day was probably September 11th when the pager went off and the team was being deployed. She didn't end up going, but I still remember that day like as clear as a bell with a 911 page from her going, you need to call me. And she told me that the FEMA team was being deployed to New York City. The next time she deployed, when she deployed to New Orleans, she deployed by herself. She deployed as a sole resource. So the MATF one had deployed to Mississippi. Jess and one other person had deployed as a single resource down in New Orleans, and that had a huge impact on her, and that's where her love from New Orleans came from. She deployed down for that wake of Hurricane Katrina, and when she came home, she didn't come home the same person. And talking about her experiences down there and teaching classes around the state and all that stuff became the way she dealt with it, and she got through it. In the years to follow her job as a firefighter, she never wanted me to worry either. So every time she got hurt, guess who she never called? So there's a couple of guys here, and I'm going to get the road wrong. Is it Girard Drive?
Yeah, Girard Ave.
The Girard Ave fire. So Jess was working on Engine 4 that night. Her whole crew got trapped under a ceiling collapse. And Jess was one of 2, I believe, that got transported to the hospital that day. So I don't know if Pat, I think it's, if I screw up the name, I think it's Pat Marsh that bugged her that morning. So somebody, Pat Marsh in the ED, was treating Jess that morning, like, you're gonna call Chris, right? And she's like, no. You're gonna call Chris, right? No. You're gonna call Chris, right? So they finally handed her the phone. They go, wake up Chris and call him and let him know you're okay. Well, lo and behold, we hung up the phone, and my Deputy State Fire Marshal Keith Rodenheiser called a minute later and goes, before I say something, how's Jess? So I called Jess and said, if you would let that happen, you and I were having words. So, well, I didn't want you to worry. So, her time at the hospital, she loved that place. She loved Nashua Fire, but she loved Southern New Hampshire Medical Center just as much. Monday night, somebody came to me, I can't remember who, and it was before Jess had passed. And they said, hey, we know Nashua means a lot to Jess. And, obviously Nashua will have a lot involved with what's going on even here today. And when she said it, I don't think she was doing it, but the way I took it was thinking that maybe Southern New Hampshire Medical Center would be left out. And I looked at that woman that night, that nurse, and I said, make no mistake. Jess loved Nashua Fire. She'll bleed red for Nashua Fire. But Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, you guys were her nurses, and that was her house. And there was no way in hell that Southern New Hampshire Medical Center would be left out anything with Jess. Jess changed hats in 2017, and she went and she put full into Southern New Hampshire Medical Center. Her whole goal, just to make it a better place, just like she did Nashua Fire. I could go on all day talking about her and some of the things she did, and her wit and her funny things and some of the stories we had, but I'll leave you with this. And this goes to everybody, fire and nursing. You always want to know what Jess was all about. She didn't care how you got there. You earned your place. So whether you got hired as a probationary firefighter, you got hired as an RN, you got hired as an LNA, whatever. She didn't care who you were. She didn't care where you came from. And she put any personal things aside. And she gave you the #1 opportunity through mentoring and friendship and her wit and her funniness to make you the best, whether it's the best firefighter or the best nurse or the best LNA or the best huck or whatever you can be. So if you want to honor Jess, pay it forward. Go to work with a smile. Remember why you got into whatever you did. Fire service, nursing, whatever. Go back to why you got into it. Don't forget it. Love the job and love the work. And always take care of the people that are either working with you or working for you. They come first. Thank you very much for everybody coming here today. I can't thank Local 789 enough. They've been by my side since last Tuesday. Thank you, Chief Buxton. And thank you guys all. And I got to do one last shout out real quick before I close. Everybody in a tie-dye shirt, stand up. So what's the tie-dye for? Jess's last day at Nashua Fire Rescue was when she retired. She wore a tie-dye shirt. And she's like, I printed it up to be a uniform shirt, and where's Deputy Kerrigan? She goes, she didn't care what the department said or what the chief said. She goes, I'm wearing a tie-dye shirt. When Jess got cancer in January, and we went to chemo for the very first time, the nurses, Mary, Laura, Stacy Carroll, they started a little thing called basically, they were bringing Jess to the fight. So they showed up, and they created basically the name, the Wyman Warriors. So if you look on the back of that shirt, those 4 nurses started Wyman Warriors. And so then Nashua Fire Rescue made the tie-dye shirts. So Jess loved bright colors, she loved that stuff, but I tell you right now, everybody that's wearing tie-dye here today, she's loving every minute of it. So, to include the Jess Wyman hair, Mark, do you mind? It's in my hat. So when Jess thought she was gonna lose her hair from chemo, I actually found this online. And I said, well, if you have to cut your hair off, Jess, so this is for you. Thank you, everybody.
Well, I don't know where I go from that, but I think Jess will like this. My father, he was a retired chief at Nashua Fire Rescue, Jess, if you didn't know. He's always said to me, say hello to folks you know. Meaning behind this, unfortunately, becomes clear as you grow older. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. We don't know when we'll hop on the rig one last time, when our last cup of 3 o'clock coffee will be, or when you'll bump into a retiree one last time. So do just that. Say hello. Take a moment. Talk to one another. Share some stories. Have a laugh. Wish each other well, and celebrate. Celebrate being here today. Celebrate that you knew Lieutenant Wyman. And celebrate because that's what she'd want. Jess, you'll be sorely missed. Your life's going to continue on through stories told at tub room tables, at nursing stations in the hospital, by the cadets at Camp Fully Involved, and in our hearts forever. In just a moment, after the honor guard renders a final salute, find the bartender, offer a toast. You'll find me over there. Offer a toast to one of the toughest lieutenants that this fireman's had the privilege to know. Oh, and one final thing, Lou. Just don't hold it against Chris or the chief that they let an Engine 1 guy be the MC today. Rest easy, Jess. This concludes the formal ceremony to celebrate the life of Lieutenant Jess Wyman. Please stay around, have some drinks, and celebrate with us all. Uniform firemen, if you could come around, pick up the chairs, we can open this place up, and certainly, let's get some drinks.